Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, I want to welcome you to my YouTube class. In today's class, we're going to be spending quite a little time to dissect and talk about this nematoparasite that is known as hookworm. Hookworm. So when we talk about hookworm, what comes to the mind is the fact that there are two different aspects of this hookworm parasite. We have the one that affects animals like dog, cats, and etc. And we also have the ones that affect man. We're going to be looking at this sequentially. But because we are not studying a veterinary, we're not in the veterinary school where you talk about parasites that affect other animals. We're going to be talking about the ones that affect man, even though I will mention some of the animal hookworm parasites. So the two main hookworm parasites that affect man are the one we call the Ancylostoma duodenale and the Necator americanus. Ancylostoma, this is the Ancylostoma duodenale, and Necator, then americanus. 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 So, and start of small the name. So I will say write it again. Let me clear this up. In terms of a classification of this parasite, we have that the phylum is Nematoda. Of course, we've been studying nematoparasite. The phylum is Nematoda. Then the class is Phasmadia. Then the other is Strongylata. Strongylata. The other is Strongylata. Then Encelostomidae is the family. Then of course the genus will have two genera. Remember, the plural of genus is genera. So we have two genera. The first genera is Ancylostoma, and the second genera is Necator. And Necator, even though they actually look alike. So let me write this again. So the two species are Ancylostoma duodenale and Necator americanus. Just a minute. Okay. So Ancylostoma duodenale and Necator americanus. These are the two species of human hookworm parasites that affect man. When I say human hookworm parasite, I mean those that affect man. I will still mention the ones that affect animals or that affect other animals, like I mentioned a dog, I mentioned cat, and etc. So one of the characteristics of this parasite is that they are actually round. They are round. They are large worms. They are large worms that have those are a conical tail, and they have conical tail, yes, especially that of the female. So you discover that they are usually very large, and apart from the fact that they are large, you also discover that they have club-shaped esophagus. They have club-shaped esophagus. So the esophagus is somehow distinct in the sense that it has a club-like shape. Then, of course, the males have what they call conspicuous lobular bursa. When we say bursa, bursa is a structure that the males use in holding the females so as to facilitate a transfer of sperm. That is the function of bursa. So they have this bursa, and of course, the females have conical tail, like I mentioned. They are large ones that have conical tail. So this conical tail is mainly found within the female, and the vulva of the female is post-equatorial. Post-equatorial. When we say equatorial. So It's just trying to say that the mid part of the vulva is located after the mid part of the body. Just a minute. After the mid part of the body. So that's what we mean by uh, that's equatoria. Equatoria. So the vulva, you see the vulva behind or after the mid part of the body. That's the meaning of vulva being post equatoria. Okay, having talked about this now, then it is also important to understand the fact that the the uh, the hookworm parasites. Sorry for the noise, just a car coming in. So another important thing you should also note about this hookworm is the fact that the what's it called again? The parasite is equipped with okay, let me reverse because of the noise. So another important aspect of this parasite which I want you to understand is that the parasite is equipped with what we call a cutting plate and a dorsal cone, cutting plate, dorsal cone, and also teeth. So these are structures. You can also see buccal cavity. Yes, it has buccal cavity with a dorsal cone, then cutting plate and teeth. These structures are found in them, especially in adults, especially in the adult one. So you have what's it called again? A buccal cavity, dorsal cone, dorsal cone, then cutting plate, then teeth. So these are structures you see within the parasites, especially at the adult stage. This is what they use to, uh, you know, kind of penetrate the mucosa of the intestine, and of course, suck blood. We're still going to talk about the aspects of taking up blood cells at the intestinal stage of the pathology. Okay, having said this now, it is now time to begin to talk about the life cycle of this parasite. The life cycle of this parasite. The life cycle. So the life cycle of the parasite, has two different has a okay, we have two different aspects. We have the soil and we have the human host. Please, it's important to pay attention to this life cycle so that you can understand carefully. Now, the eggs, when released, sorry, the eggs when released or when laid, passes out just like others through the feces to the external environment. Now, once the eggs are released in feces, are passed out into the external environment in feces, then what happens or what you notice is the fact that hatching of the eggs occurs within 24 to 48 hours. So the eggs hatch, and remember the hatching does not occur within the body of the host, it hatches within the environment after it has been released. So it hatches within the environment. So once it hatches within that 24 to 48 hours, then of course the L1 larva, which is now called the rhabdiciform larva. I don't know if I wrote it here. Yes, it's called the rhabdiciform larva. The rhabdiciform larva. So the eggs hatch into rhabdiciform larva. Rhabdiciform larva, which is the L1 larva. This larva is known as the feeding larva. It feeds on the debris and some bacteria within the environment or within the feces. And as it feeds, of course, it grows and usually multiplies to become L3 within about 5 to 10 days, thereabouts. It must to become L3. Now, this L3 is now known as the unfeeding larva. The L3 does not feed. What it does is that it depends on the food it accumulated when it was still L1. And it is usually the food or the energy it accumulated at L1 that it uses to mold into the L3. So it molds from L1 to L2 and from L2 to become what? L3. This L3 is usually sheeted. Sheeted, when we say sheeted, that means that we have a layer or we have a kind of covering, protective covering that covers the larva. So if this is the larva, this larva contains a kind of structure that covers it. This is what we call a kind of sheet. So it's usually ensheeted. We use the word ensheeted, ensheeted. So ensheeted is only used for the elytral larva. This elytral larva becomes the infective stage. Now, if you are observant, you will discover that all the nematoparasites I've been talking about, this is the first time I'll be mentioning the fact that the L3 is the infective stage. So before now, we'll be talking about, okay, the parasite, we talked about Trichurus, Trichura, and we said that the L2 was the infective stage. We talked about Trichinella spiralis. L2 was the infective stage. We talked about Tutocara. L2 was the infective stage. We talked about Ascaris rubicoides. L2 was the infective stage. So this is the first time I'm presenting another infective stage that is different, and which is the L3. So in the case of hookworm, the L3, the infective stage is L3. And in this case now, you discover that the L3 is called the Phylaliform larva. L3 is called the Phylaliform larva. The L2 is the L1 is wrapped it from larva. Then the infective stage, which is L3, is the Phylaliform larva. Phylaliform larva. So this L3 larva does something, and what it does is that it's a kind of rises within the soil, or probably goes down within the soil depending on the moisture level of the soil. So when the soil is dry, then it begins to go down, following the retreating water. Then during the morning hours, or when there's a kind of dew, or probably rain, then of course it comes up again. And once it comes up, the elytral larva begins to wave itself just like a snake, and is being attracted by the carbon dioxide released by man. So someone may ask, how does these parasites know that a man is within the environment? The warmth that comes from man, and of course the carbon dioxide that comes from man, these are factors that attracts the parasite to such individual. And let's assume that the individual is walking barefooted on the soil. Then the parasite, the elytral parasite, which is the infective stage, now penetrates. Now there's something I still want to add, and that's the fact that we have active transmission and passive transmission. Now, when we say that the transmission is active, that means that the parasite by itself penetrates the body of the host. But if it's passive transmission, then of course it's either the host ingests the egg or the larva or the parasite, or an intermediate host actively ingests the parasite into the host. So in the case of hookworm, it's active transmission in the sense that the parasite, penetrates the body of the host. And which stage of this parasite does this penetration? I've mentioned it, the L3, which is called the Phylaliform larva. So I've discussed how from the eggs it hatches to become L1, then from L1 multiplies to become L3, which is the effective. And I mentioned that the feeding larva is called the L1, and what it feeds on, debris and bacteria within the feces, and the feeding larva. And that is why the L3 is usually short-lived. I think within 3 to 4 weeks thereabout. It does not last so long because a time comes when it exhaust the food it has accumulated when it was L1, and it could die off as a result of not having any more food. And possibly, why people who are working on the farm or probably on the ground where the feces was deposited, people working on the ground could march on the larva and that could kill the larva. Or intense heat. So have factors that can actually kill the larva within the environment, especially the unfeeding larva, which is the L3 larva. Okay. Having said this, we're now going into the life cycle details. So the 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 L3 larva, when it penetrates the host, either through the leg or the hand, of course, it joins circulation, passing through the liver, heart, lung regions, and joins the respiratory stream, from the bronchioles to the bronchi, from the bronchi to the trachea, from the trachea to the pharynx, mixes with the sputum. And don't forget, since it is already at L3, so within the stage when it is passing through the respiratory tree, it must again to become L4. So mixes with the sputum. By the time it mixes with the sputum, then it is swallowed again into back into the intestine, the small intestine. Now, as it lands in the intestine, that is where the L4 will now merge L3 to L4 to L4. So L4 merge to become adult within the intestine. That is where it must become adult. And once it becomes adult, of course, you know that once it becomes adult, the male and females will mate, and once they mate, they produce eggs. They produce eggs, and the eggs, of course, you know, pass through the feces into the external environment, depending on when the person who is carrying the parasite or who is suffering from the disease defecates. So when there's a person defecates, then the feces, the eggs of the parasite passes out through the feces. The eggs of the parasite pass out through the feces into the external environment, and the circle continues. So in summary, aerotheric penetrates, joint circulation, pass through the respiratory to liver lung migration through the respiratory tree. Then of course, this is with the sputum within the pharynx, swallowed back. They will have adult worm within the intestine. Then of course, eggs pass out through the feces into the external environment. Then of course, we have embryonated eggs. The eggs get embryonated within the soil. Okay, then hatch into the radiform larva, the radiform larva to filariform larva, which is L3, and the circle continues. So it's a very small one. So I said this is active transmission, not passive transmission. It's active transmission. All the nematoparasites we've been studying so far, you know, you know, have what we call the passive transmission, but in the case of a hookworm, it's active transmission. All right. So now look at the pathology of this parasite. Look at the pathology of this parasite. Pathology. Pathology. So in the terms of pathology, we can divide this into different stages. We have the cutaneous stage, we have the migration, pulmonary stage, then I have the intestinal stage, then I have the creeping eruption. So the cutaneous phase. So talk about the cutaneous phase. Once the parasite, penetrates either through the hand or the legs, of course, it causes a kind of a slight injury, which of course results to inflammation. And this may also combine with secondary bacterial infection to cause a condition we call a ground itching. Ground itching. So that is what happens at the cutaneous phase. cutaneous skin. So that time penetrates through the skin. It could be through the hand or the leg. Because these are the two areas that are mostly exposed to the soil. Either when you're farming, you use your hand, trying to weed out the weed within the soil. Then of course, if you're also walking barefooted, so these are the two places that are usually exposed to the soil. So once the parasite penetrates through the skin of the hand or the leg, that is a cutaneous phase. So it combines with secondary bacterial infection because of the lesion or the injury it has caused. It has caused there in a slight injury, and the combination of this inflammation and the secondary bacterial infection can now cause what is called ground itching. The second stage is migration or the pulmonary phase. This is the phase in which the parasite migrates through the liver, the lung, and of course other aspects of the respiratory tree. And without being told, or from the previous experience, you discover that since this parasite migrates through the liver, of course, it can cause blood spills on the liver, on the lungs, resulting to pneumonitis on the lungs, or even cause uh, inflammation of the bronchi, or even trachea, can cause injury within the trachea, can result to bronchial asthma, dry cough, sore throat. So many things can surface as a result of this parasite migrating through this region of the body or the respiratory tree. Then, having said that, the the it's also important you understand that the manifestation of the disease depends on two main factors. Number one, depending on worm load and also the species of the hookworm disease. So the worm load, if an individual has maybe less than 25 species of Necator americanus, is usually symptomless. Does not produce much symptom. Then 25 to about 100 produces maybe slight symptom. Then about 100 to 500 produce moderate symptom. But if it's more than 500, that causes a huge problem. It can even result to death if not treated. Okay, going back to these stages, we are now at the intestinal phase, intestinal stage. So at the intestinal stage, it's more drastic in the sense that so many things happen. This is a stage where the parasite uses its buccal cavity to eat up blood cells. Of course, it uses the buccal cavity to penetrate through the mucosa and submucosa, and they consume lots of blood cells, resulting to anemia and even loss of blood. Then other factors like abdominal pain, uh, geophagy, flatulence, that's having bloated stomach, then nausea, the person may even feel nausea, even diarrhea. So I have several other things that could happen at this intestinal phase if not treated on time. Then, generally speaking, hookworm disease can also cause pot belly in children. You know what pot belly is in children. Then in in uh, other grown-up ones, it can cause delayed puberty. Someone who is supposed to experience puberty at the age of 13, 14 may have delayed puberty. It can even cause maternal and infant and maternal mortality. Then there are so many other things. It can even cause stillbirth. Yes, it can cause abortion. That means spontaneous abortion. So we have several pathological effects of hookworm disease. Meanwhile, don't forget the name of the disease. The name of the disease that is caused by Ancylostoma duodenale Necator americanus. It's called the hookworm disease. Hookworm disease. Okay. The last one is creeping eruption. Now, in the case of creeping eruption, I want to say that I want to repeat that thing I said before. There are two different categories of hookworm parasites. We have the ones that affect man. We also have the ones that affect animals. So the ones that affect animals, Ancylostoma, caninum, braziliense. So these are the four main species, the four main animal species, the one that affect animals. They they actually get into man, or man can be infected by this parasite, but they don't mature into adult in man because man is not the main host. Remember, a parasite must make contact with the appropriate host at the appropriate time before a parasitic host relationship can be established. So in this creeping eruption, the two main species that have always been implicated are the caninum and the brazilian. So what happens is that they penetrate the top part of the epithelium and they begin to wander. They begin to wander, a kind of begin aimless journey, tunneling around uh, that part of the body. And of course, as they do that, they also cause a lesion within that part of the body. So this is what we call eruption creeping eruption. So the effect of the non-human hookworm parasites on man is what we call the creeping eruption. So this is the pathological effect. Diagnosis. How can you diagnose this? It's simple. Through the demonstration of the presence of the parasite of the eggs, or even the parasite itself, that's the hookworm parasite, a fecal sample. You use uh, I've been saying this. Almost all the nematode parasites have the same way of the same method of diagnosis. So you get the physics, you put your reagent, maybe your your iodine solution, then you put on a slide, view under the microscope to see if you see the egg or the parasite, or possibly the parasite itself. So sometimes in the physics, you can see the parasite, you can even see the egg. So either of the two can be used for the diagnosis. Then treatment, mebendazole. Mebendazole is also a drug of choice. One can also use mebendazole for the purpose of treating this parasite. Then any drug that can any of course I mentioned the fact that this parasite causes anemia because it takes up blood cells. So any drug you can take in order to replace the lost blood is also encouraged because blood is lost. And I think we also do the calculation to look at how uh, this parasite, takes blood. For Ancylostoma duodenale, duodenale, it talks about 2.6 milliliter of blood per day. The Necator americanus talks about 0.03 milliliter of blood. One can even give you an assignment or probably an exam to calculate the volume of blood lost by Mr. Mr. Obi, who has 500 Ancylostoma duodenale and maybe 250 Necator americanus. And within 7 days in the hospital, you can calculate the volume of blood lost. So how do you do it? It's simple. 0.26 times by 500 times by 7, then 0.03 times by 250 times by 7. You add up these two, it gives you the volume of blood lost within 1 week. One can also ask you the volume of blood lost within 2 weeks. It's still simple. You multiply this in by 14 days because I said this 0.2 milliliter of blood is the one lost per day. And also be careful of the units. So one could also use another unit. So depending on the units that you probably see in the question, that will determine how to end. Okay, so I think this is how far we can go. Okay, epidemiology. How does this disease spread? We have physical factors that enable the spread of this disease, like oxygen. The eggs actually like oxygen. So in an environment where there is no oxygen, limited oxygen, the eggs may not be able to survive for a long time. Then a shaded place does not like sunlight. Sunlight could destroy the eggs or intense temperature. Then moisture, yes, it also thrives in an environment with adequate moisture. So these are the physical factors. The temperature, the normal temperature, any temperature less than 17 degrees can destroy the egg. So the appropriate temperature is about 28 to 30 degrees centigrade. That's the optimal temperature that helps the survival of this parasite. Then what again? Then we have natural factors like race can also be a factor. Uh, Black people are more resistant to this parasite than white people. Why? Because the skin of white people is usually, you know, soft, and the parasite can easily penetrate through them. But a typical African man, especially those in the village, you can know how thick and how hard their skin is. So sometimes it becomes very difficult for the parasite to penetrate. Then women are more susceptible than men because the bodies of women, of course, are soft. The body of women is soft. So it's covered that it's easy for them to penetrate. Then age too, children are more susceptible than adults because the body of children, you know, the body of children is also soft. Then occupation. You can't compare somebody who does a white collar job and a farmer. So for somebody who does a white collar job, the person may be less susceptible to the disease, except probably the person, was barefooted in an environment that has been contaminated with the eggs of this parasite. If not, a farmer is more susceptible to this disease than somebody who does a white collar job. So that is how far we can go in talking about hookworm disease or hookworm parasite. See you in my next class.